Welcome to my world, my war, the war I gotta survive every day. This is my war. You're all welcome.
Yes, I'm happy today. We have a professional, we have a doctor, we've had someone I've wanted to talk to for a long time because I know your words and your knowledge and your information is going to be so important for my audience. So the first question I want to start with is an easy question, is what's your name and what do you do?
Well, thank you, Shaka, for sorting all this out and organising this meetup. So my name is Dr. Devika Patel. I am a psychiatrist, and basically that means that I'm a doctor who specialises in mental health. And I very regularly see people with schizophrenia. And we met on Instagram, and we've done a podcast together. And I'm just so glad that now we can
do it.
Split the script, and you can tell me, you can ask me some questions, and we can take it from there.
And you might ask me some questions later too.
Yeah, of course.
So everyone knows I got diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Not even just schizophrenia. I got diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. So I got to deal with the paranoia and the schizophrenia. So obviously I've had so much questions around schizophrenia because I've heard about schizophrenia from the African side of my family.
Yes.
And then I've heard it from the Western side. So I'm going to try cover both sides in another time. But covering the Western side, let's just start with what is schizophrenia and what is the symptoms.
Okay, so schizophrenia is, we would call it a severe mental illness, and it's something that you get relapses and then periods of remission. So it's not something that is generally for a person that's just there all the time, but you get these episodes and you get the symptoms of psychosis, and then those episodes can go away with medication, psychology, and social support. Now, the symptoms that you actually experience during that time can be different for every single person. So I've never, ever seen two people that are the same.
Symptoms? Oh,
never, ever. Because with all mental illnesses, they are all individually made by whatever life experiences you've had. So it can never be the same.
Okay.
But there are categories of symptoms, and we can talk about that.
That's what I was going to say. So the delusions, the hearing voice, is that not common within?
Yeah, so that's common, but what the content of it is always different.
Explain.
So we will go through the symptoms. So I'll talk about how it might start off. So initially it can be very hard to detect because it can look like depression or anxiety. So the person, for maybe like a few weeks, some people it's days, sometimes it could be months, they kind of start withdrawing from friends, from society. If they're at school, grades might start going down. If at work, their performance is going down, they might lose their job. And then slowly, the psychotic symptoms start emerging. So they could start as hallucinations, and that could be in the form of hearing things that other people cannot hear, or seeing things. Those are the most common. But it could also be smells, and it could also be touch as well. So all these different things that can happen. And it's not in the person's mind. The mind is playing tricks. It's very real. So and you could maybe kind of give an example, but hearing the voice is not like the kind of voice we get in our head that tells us to do something. The voice is like my voice.
Yes.
Would you say that's correct?
Totally correct.
Yeah.
But I also had an experience, which I've spoken about, when I was on holiday. And I felt like I was hearing my friends talking about me outside of the balcony. And then I went down and it wasn't them.
There.
What is that?
So what happens is your mind goes into a bit of overdrive. And one of the hypotheses of why this happens is that there's an excess of dopamine. And what that means, how that plays out is your mind is constantly looking for anything that could be like harmful or dangerous. So right now, I can maybe hear some like children and some people playing. If I had too much dopamine in my brain, which is what happens in psychosis, then my brain is going to turn that into like, let's try to make sense of that information. And that becomes, I can hear someone chatting and saying, get out of the park, this place is dangerous.
That makes sense.
So that's what, your brain is constantly trying to figure out information.
That makes sense.
For me right now, I don't have psychosis, so all I can hear is your voice. And everything else is blurred. It's almost like, like cinematic mode or portrait mode on your phone? Just focus, that's what we can do. That's what we're doing all the time in life. But with psychosis, that filter is gone.
That makes complete
Every
sense.
single sense becomes heightened, and it's about danger.
That makes sense.
So that's what you get. So you're getting these voices, then you're also getting delusions, which add to the hallucinations.
Yeah.
So now your brain's trying to work out, well, what is that voice? What's happening? How do I make sense of this? So it creates a false belief.
Yeah.
But that belief is so strong, no matter what anyone says to you, no matter how illogical it is, you're still going to stick by it. And it could be something like, MI5 is after me, or...
I've heard a lot of those kind of cases.
Yeah. Or like during COVID time, I had lots of people that were that had delusions that they had started COVID.
Yeah.
Or that they were infecting people.
I had a person I was in hospital with. He had this thing covering his ceiling in his room.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is that? And he was like, because someone's trying to look through the... Yeah, I've heard a lot of cases like that.
Or like there's cameras planted anywhere, but I can't see them, and nor can you, so you wouldn't be able to even get rid of them. Yeah. So really, they're illogical, but to the person they are very, very real, unshakable beliefs. And it's not like, do you know how in religion we have a belief in God? Yeah. Or we believe in things like miracles. It's not like that. If it's in keeping with your culture or your religion, then it's not a delusion. Yeah. If other people in your community are also believing the same thing, it's not a delusion. Yeah. And you would have found that only you had those thoughts, and you've held them strongly. Got it. So you got your hallucinations, you got delusions, you might have something weird with your thoughts. You might feel people putting thoughts into your mind, taking them out, or occasionally people just go blank. So they'll be like talking, and the mid-sentence, it just goes totally blank. So their thoughts are really impaired. That can have an impact on their speech. So their speech might be disorganized. Yes. They might think that they're speaking quite normally, but to the other person, it's just like gobbledygook. Yes. Can't really make sense of it.
Thank you. So this is why I needed this conversation.
Yeah.
Clarity. Thank you.
And then I think the one biggest thing that kind of makes it so much more harder to get help is something called insight. And when you're unwell, you lose insight. So let me give you an example. If I had a stomach ache, I would know, okay, something's not right. I'm not feeling well. I need to go to the doctor. Yeah. If you started having these psychotic symptoms, you would not wake up and be like, oh, this could mean that I'm having a mental illness, or I've got psychosis. I need to see a doctor. That does not happen. Instead, you think, something's really going wrong in the world. Yeah. Everyone is against me. Yeah. I need to protect myself. So if police come to your door, or doctors come to your door, you're going to think they're part of some big plan to lock me away, take me away. So you lose insight. You have no ability to know you are unwell. And that just makes it so much more complex and harder to treat. And that would kind of be your main thing. Some people have some problems with their movement. They get very slowed movement or abnormal movements. But those are the main kind of things. And they can have some things where your mood is kind of like not depressed, but just nothing. Yeah. Like not really feeling anything. Like, just like a bit apathetic. Numb. Okay. Totally numb. So like almost like not bothered. So those kind of things will totally impact how someone is functioning. Imagine having those symptoms and being able to go to work.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. What's the earliest age that schizophrenia can be present?
So, as with most conditions, there's kind of like a bell curve to say this is the range that you get the most first episodes, and that's kind of like 18 to 35 generally. But some people can have them younger. I've seen a 14-year-old have an episode. And then there's another peak. Some people might have them.
An episode of schizophrenia at 14?
Yeah.
Wow.
Their first psychosis at 14. Yeah. So it can happen earlier. But generally, kind of, you're thinking 16, 18 to 35 is when those first episodes will emerge.
Okay. And what would you say are the causes? I think this is a question that a lot of people would want to know.
Yeah.
What are like, I wouldn't say main causes, but what are the causes?
Yeah. So, as with all mental illness, there's multiple causes.
That's why I didn't want to say there must be like...
Yeah, there's loads. And it's not like even if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I have that does not mean that you're going to get it. But it helps to give a little bit of clarity if you do have the illness. Yeah. So there could be a family history of schizophrenia. This does not mean that you are going to get it, but it just increases your risk a little. Yeah. The kind of general population risk is 1 in 100. If you have a relative that has schizophrenia, then that's just going to go up a little bit. So it might go up to 6 in 100 chance, something like that. Then there are some research studies saying about if you're born in a city, that's a higher risk. Yeah. The type of birth that you have, there could be some trauma at birth, your upbringing, any kind of traumas in your life as you're growing up that could cause it.
Yeah.
And then your brain's still doing a lot of growing from kind of 16, 18. And that's why we get those symptoms around that age, because it might actually slowly be manifesting. And 16 to 18, there's lots of life changes happening as well. You're kind of moving either college, university, relationships, breakups. There's a lot of kind of social changes, and that could be a trigger for that psychotic episode, because it's kind of like all those things are there, and then you have something stressful.
Yeah.
All the risk factors there, then something stressful happens, and then that's like,
I feel like my case is similar to that.
Yeah.
The stress triggered so much for me.
Yeah.
And still to this day, whenever I get stressed, I'm rarely stressed. Thank God. But when I do, but I think that kind of works against me in a way, actually, because if you're stressed all the time, somehow your body kind of gets used to it.
Yeah, it's like your way of functioning.
Because I'm not, when I do get stressed,
your body's like, what?
It's like, what is going on? Another question I want to ask you, which you kind of touched on a bit, is, can schizophrenia be inherited? Because I've met a lot of people that said their dad had it, and then their mum, and then they don't have it, but like, you know.
So it's more of a family history rather than like, you will definitely get it if your parent or parents have got it. It increases your risk, but that does not mean that is it. You are going to get schizophrenia. Your risk isn't. It's a bit like diabetes. You might have a family history of diabetes,
but that doesn't 100%
mean that you're going to get it. There are ways to, like if you have a much more supportive upbringing and you have lots of what we call protective factors, which is a really good support system, you're employed, your financial situation is good, you've got a partner, all those things will protect you. Because they're all things that help your mental health.
What you said about financial situation being good is
because if it's not, then that's a stressor, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And when I think back to the position I was in when I had my breakdowns, all those things wasn't there. Like financial situation, relationship situation. So it did add a major part. At the time, you realise, but I don't think you realise how much
of an impact
it's actually having until you sort it out. And then you realise, oh my God, like
there was so much stuff.
There was so much stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what are the main misconceptions around schizophrenia?
Okay, so a lot of people, I don't know where it's come from, but they think schizophrenia is a split personality.
Yes.
Which is not.
Yeah.
You have one personality, and that is yours. I think it's probably how it's portrayed in the media and stuff.
Yes.
But it's got nothing to do with changing personalities at all. Yes, how you are is different to how, when you're unwell, is different to how you are when you're well. But that's because you are responding to all the things that are coming in. Hallucinations, delusions, all of that. But it's got nothing to do with having a split personality. And you're not like well one day and then switch, or you don't switch mid-conversation. That's not how it works.
And the violent side as well.
Oh, 100%.
I was wanting you to touch on that, because a lot of people, whenever they hear the word schizophrenia, they automatically mean like, oh my God, he's a violent person.
Dangerous and violent. Again, media portrayal is getting it all wrong, because they just
that's the only image people see in movies.
Because it creates like drama, doesn't it? Let's get someone with schizophrenia and they're going to kill all these 10 people. Makes good film, but it does nothing for the people with schizophrenia. So yeah, that's one of the biggest misconceptions. But actually, all the research shows that if you've got a mental illness, you're more likely to be a victim of crime or violence, because you're much more vulnerable.
That makes sense. And that leads to my next question, actually. Is there different levels of schizophrenia? Because I've been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I understand how I got that diagnosis when I realised how I was behaving and the voices I was hearing, the delusions at the time. But like, I'm not the typical. I don't know if you saw my BBC documentary where the doctor was saying maybe I had a misdiagnosis, maybe a schizoaffective disorder, or something like that. Anyway, because she was saying that my case is not like. So it always made me think. I always wanted to ask you: is there different levels? Is there like people with severe schizophrenia than people that's got mild?
Yeah, I can answer that. So there is, I think how we can answer it is thinking about prognosis. So yes, you can have the diagnosis of schizophrenia, but for example, I'm seeing you today, but I will see someone on Monday at work and their severity of schizophrenia may be different. Because they may have been tried on medication but still have symptoms. Whereas you have used medication and got back to, I would say, you can answer this, full level of functioning.
We're there, 99%.
Whereas that other person may have had several relapses and never got back to their highest level of functioning. And so it's not really different types, but everyone's maybe response to medication, and also, again, their support system.
Yes.
Because
That was my
medication
next
is not
question. I was
everything.
going to ask you, what is most of the things that stops a person from reaching full level of recovery?
Yeah. So medication, finding medication that works. We have lots of medication because there's not one that works for everyone.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is trial and error, trying some before we know which one's a good one that helps your symptoms and doesn't give you too many debilitating side effects. Because there's also no point me giving you a really good medication which takes away schizophrenia away, but you are in bed all day.
Okay.
No point, because you can't function.
That was my biggest fear as well. That was one of my biggest fears.
So,
because the milligrams I was on before, sorry to cut you, I was that zombie fighter. That's everyone's biggest
So it's all
fear.
about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Some people, they will be resistant to medication, so medication will not help them.
Yeah.
So medication's one, finding the right dose and the right one, social support, and also knowledge.
Yeah.
So knowing what your relapse signs are, because sometimes.
And how do you?
Yeah.
Does a doctor have to tell you that, or do you have to be?
No.
What's the word I'm looking for? Do you have to be like introspective yourself to be able to know?
So as doctors, we do this work with patients during their recovery, and definitely before we discharge, if we're ever thinking about discharge. But as soon as someone is kind of on medication stable, we start doing that relapse prevention work.
Okay.
So it's educating them on what their symptoms were in their last episode, what it looks like at the beginning, so like early warning signs, what it looks like when it's getting a bit worse, and then late warning signs. Because in the early stages, you are still able to understand, something's quite not right, let me speak to my doctor, might just need to increase medication a little bit temporarily, nip it in the bud. Because relapses are caused by stressful situation, and that's something that we cannot manage. And that's why I always tell patients that I cannot guarantee that you might not have a relapse, but what we can guarantee is that you know what your early warning signs are, so you can come back to us and say,
this is how I'm feeling.
Something's a bit not right.
Exactly.
I'm not very unwell, but something's a bit off.
Yes, exactly.
And that's when you seek help.
Another question I wanted to ask you, which is like a popular question in the Black community, a question that like always gets asked by friends or aunties or uncles is hearing voices. Is it demonic? Is there, because what they always think is like, why does the voices have to be negative? Do you know what I mean? Why does it always? Because the voices people normally hear, it's never something like, go give that person a fiver.
Yeah, of course not.
So like, I know you've got the clinical term of like, is it because, I don't know, however you want to explain it.
Let me think of a way how we can think about it, because they're never going to be. Because I've heard there are some times when
I know there's
not.
definitely a spiritual side to it.
Yeah.
Because we all know there's cases of like possession. Things taking over people, and we know that exists. But not all cases are like that. Some cases are what I want you to explain, like what could be something completely different.
So the reason that they are like negative voices is because all of this is being created from a place of fear. It's not coming from a place of happiness. The reason that the mental illness has occurred is because you're in a very dark
I was just about
place.
to say that the state they're in is important. And you mentioned something that's really important too. You said that experiences they've been through. That could shape.
100%.
Do you know what I mean?
That's why every single person's delusion is going to be different. It's going to be based on what their fears are.
And what they're into at that time. So the MI5, they could be
100%.
into stuff like, not MI5 stuff, but...
What's in the news is coming in on the wards. That's what I'm hearing. It's always very, like, when there's stuff going on in politics, when there's stuff happening with Russia, Ukraine, the war right now. I'm hearing Gaza all the time. Israel, all of that is what's going into people's minds, what they're consuming, and then it's playing into that delusion. But it will usually always be negative. I have had people that have, sometimes they have something called a running commentary. So they will have a voice that is saying what they're doing. So for them, it's you could say it's a neutral voice, but you can imagine that's the most annoying thing in the world, and that can cause distress. So it's always going to be a distressing experience. Hearing something that you can't find where it's coming from, you have no control of it. You can't tell it to shut up. You can't tell it to stop. And because you're the state you're in, it's going to be something
That's working against you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Our final question is, can someone that's had a schizophrenia diagnosis or suffering from schizophrenia, can they make a full recovery? Yeah, I'm like an anomaly though. Not an anomaly. I hope I'm not. I hope there's so many people out there and I'm not an anomaly, but they just haven't shown their faces.
Yeah.
But I rarely hear cases, but from you, I would love to know. Yeah,
they do.
Good.
They do get better. The reason why I don't see them that much, and we were talking about this earlier, is because once you're well, you don't need to see a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
But I will continue to see the people that need help. And then that leaves the 25% that, despite medication, psychology, all the support, they will still have the symptoms and chronic symptoms.
Okay.
So that might answer your question of, is there different severities as well? Because, different people's prognosis is
And I want to end with this. What could help someone get to their full recovery? Is there like a list of things? You named a few things. You said the good support system.
Yeah.
Could you name like 3 or 4 things and then we can just end it there beautifully?
Medication.
Yeah.
Not always the answer for everyone.
Do they have to take medication?
Not always.
Yeah.
But initially, yes.
Okay.
And until things are going good and you're in a better place, yes. That's kind of, I always say that medication is a safety net.
Okay.
It's good to have it there, just in case.
Okay.
Just in case. If it's not causing you problems, have it.
Okay.
Medication, psychology.
What do you mean by
psychological therapy, talking therapy.
Okay.
To get to the root of why did this happen?
Yes.
It's going to be life experiences.
Yes.
And unless those are worked through,
it'll keep popping back up.
Because it's just unworked on. It's stuff there that needs to be worked on.
Medication,
psychological therapy, social support system.
And can we break that down? Social support system.
So who are the people that are going to look out for you to know when you're unwell? So that could be friends or family. They need to know that, yes, I have this diagnosis. This is what happens when I start to get unwell. When I get unwell, please can you do this for me?
Beautiful.
Call the doctor, get me to the GP, even if I say no.
Yeah.
You yourself knowing what your early warning signs are, so just having so much enough knowledge about your own illness, all of that's really good. And then the other things that you just do to stay well, good diet, good exercise, meditation, mindfulness, if it's your thing, those kind of things. Equally, keeping all the things that are good for your physical health works excellent for your mental health as well.
Thank you so much.
I would say that would be it.
Incredible. Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Brilliant work.